addiction has been something that's been running through my life for a while. And I find it ironic that people in heavy addiction have this idea of the devil in particular. Not this guy with horns. I just believe it's a certain presence of something that just isn't pleasant. And I've met many a people who are in active addiction. They all describe it the same, but it's only usually heavy addicts, not someone who's just like a weekend drinker. It's more the people more inclined to really push it. Like even outside Aldi the other day when I was with Sophie, this guy was shouting to a guy, "You'll go into hell," and he had a can in his hand. And he was like, "Actually, no, you're not. You're going to heaven." That's what Sophie said to me. And I was just thinking about it on the drive home. That's crazy how, well, I haven't met this guy before, but I know he's speaking like they all do. And I find that interesting because I believe that alcohol, when it gets to a certain point, it can open gates in your head to certain things you don't want to see and certain perception of life. And, like you're describing, maybe like a different side of what you probably shouldn't see because it's a bit too, I don't know, it can warp your thoughts, your internal perception of everything. It's a hard one to describe. I don't want to say it's like a devil with horns, you know what I mean? But
It changes your baseline, so then that affects everything else and the way you do everything else.
Yeah, and well, let's think about it this way, okay? The devil, that's the red bloke with the pitchfork and the horns that lives like under heaven, and there's lots of fire and lava and torture. That's just a symbolic representation created by human beings to understand a fundamental aspect of reality.
That's what's going on in your mind.
And that's how you have to try and understand it in fiction and in pop culture. But what that's actually saying on a deep level, potentially, I'm just playing with ideas here, is there is a spirit in the world that is not good, and there is a spirit that is good, and maybe that's what God and the devil and good and evil is, right? We all know what it feels like to be animated. I use that term specifically, like our actions and beliefs are animated by a spirit that is not good, one that we wouldn't choose. When we think things about other people that are not nice, when we're jealous, when we're hateful, it's almost like we're filled with this goo, like dark, dingy treacle running through our blood as we go and do things, right? I think that's real. And your conscience in sort of psychologically stable people has the purpose of recognizing when we're animated by the wrong spirit. Like, psychopaths just go around and I think they're animated by this spirit all the time, and they manipulate people and cause damage and don't have that conscience. But then on the other side of that, there's also this spirit that animates you when you do good things, when you're friendly, when you have a good conversation with someone, when you connect with someone on a deep level, when you give food to a homeless person, or you give your friend a gift that you weren't supposed to give them because it was their birthday, you just decided, you saw something and you gave it to them. You get this warm feeling. That's a spirit animating you. And yes, you can give me a scientific paper on how that's due to a neurochemical or a hormone. I'm like, that's great. But the way I see it is life is powered by these two forces. And it's interesting here that a lot of people with addictions and other psychological disorders and people that lose touch with the reality talk about spirits and the evil, and maybe it's a real thing. And then it goes back to what we mean by real, because that devil guy with the horns doesn't exist, but these forces that guide our actions, just subjectively, I think we can relate to them. What are you gonna say, Jake?
So these people that have addictions, there's some negative energy that's kind of attached onto them because they're doing these certain things, and therefore they sort of get possessed by it.
Yeah, well, that's isn't it? Well, that's to me what it probably is.
In a nutshell,
because they don't want to do the thing, but they're compelled. And biologically, that might be a deficiency in a certain neurochemical or whatever, but it feels like there's a ghost in you that makes you do this thing. It's like you're being tortured from a past life or for something you've done. And it's always people with addiction are always cursed by something in their childhood or in their past, or something strikes them, and it's almost like they see raw evil, or they experience raw evil, and it goes into their soul, like a Death Eater from Harry Potter.
The like angel and the devil on your shoulder, like that. Devil's always just like
Takes over. He takes over. He kills the angel on the other side, and then hope's gone, and all you have is melancholy.
I went on a 6-month drug binge when I was 22. That wasn't the first time I took drugs. I actually had like a year-long break at uni of anything. I was sober for a year. I got back to, taking drugs, and I just went mad on anything and everything. Ecstasy, 2CB. I didn't do anything like acid or anything like that. Shrooms I knew not to touch, because the last time I did it when I was about 19, I had a bad trip because this guy was pretending he was Mr. Alpha, and he was like pretending to push us in the sea because we were down by the sea. And that just put me and my mate on a really bad one, and we were both really anxious. Yeah. But after that 6-month binge, I ended up in hospital because I lost the plot. I wouldn't say losing the plot. I had such severe paranoia that I had to be strapped to a bed in hospital. And then my dad turned up. This whole street was cordoned off because I completely lost it. And I think my friend who was here with me, he's damaged from it now because it was just all too much for the brain. And then, my dad turned up, and then he opted to sedate me. And I almost died twice. I had to be resuscitated twice. And then ever since then, I had lasting paranoia. As soon as I got out, I remember going out. I was stupid enough to go out the next day drinking, because I thought I was that person before all of this. And then I realized that I could hear my whispers were like about me, but it was everyone. And then I went outside, and I had this idea that the police were plotting on me. By the way, I'm not actually crazy. I'm not diagnosed crazy, but this is like what was part of the repercussions of that. And it was just like everybody was whispering about me, and I was like, this is not normal. So I just drank more to try and blank it out, and I ended up thinking the police were plotting on me. So I got arrested. But then, that kept happening, and it lasted. I still get paranoid now, but I got arrested again, and I got put in like a program for alcohol, and I had to do that for 6 months. It wasn't the alcohol that did it, it was drugs. But that might have changed my perception a little bit.
Well, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but so tell me if any of this seems inaccurate, but it sounds to me like you went into psychosis, so you lost touch with reality, and then this paranoia became real. It was like you were hallucinating that the police were plotting you, and everyone was talking about you, and you disconnected for a moment, like you're playing a video game. I mean, your controller disconnected. You weren't in the world anymore, or what you thought the world was. And then you've come back, and years later, you're much more functional and sane, and you don't have such like extreme psychosis, obviously, but you're still detached. I mean, like, your controller died, and you can plug it back in and put it back in the game, but once you're out, it's like taking the red pill in the Matrix. You can't unsee it anymore. Like, for you, reality changed on a fundamental level, and it was in a very toxic and detrimental way based on where you're at. But you're never the same after something like that. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine what.
Can I ask, like, when you're on that 6-month binge, what was like your brain like? What was it like to be in that?
When you're on the drugs, completely euphoric, and probably the most intense experience ever. And then when you come off it, probably is the darkest thing you'll ever experience. Just sat there waiting for this come down to go, but I'd never let it go because it would be week after week after week. Because it would be mainly ecstasy or crystal MDMA pills, you know what I mean? And then just all sorts of stuff, Valium, Tramadol. I remember there was a packet here. Just like stuff that you shouldn't be doing all at the same time. Taking an obscene amount of Valium, probably like 13 or 14 at a time. And I would sleep for like 4 days, wake up, drink, then back to it. And it just spiraled out. Balloons, an insane amount of them. And yeah, then it came to this one day where it was just what it was, you know. I really don't know what it was. It wasn't MDMA. It fell apart too easily, and that's what triggered it. But yeah, this whole experience was just, yeah, the paranoia creeped in slowly, kind of ignored it. But then it just kind of peaked. And it was like times where I couldn't sleep for like 3 or 4 days straight. And then like it started inclining. I think maybe brain damage happened or something because the paranoia just got out of control.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that, man. It's profound. You know what I mean? You went, as much as it like, yeah, you fried your brain and stuff, like you went to some deep, dark places. I mean, going back to what I said about Carl Jung's idea of the tree having its roots in hell to go up to heaven, it's like you went out, bro. You went down there. You know, you saw where the demons spawned from. You know what I mean? You saw the place the demons don't even want to go. And the process over the last decade maybe or something is you climbing up that tree. You know what I mean? And then, yeah, I mean, it to me now, from talking to you, I understand why your music has so much depth. And I understand now why the average person might not understand your music on a level or might not be able to recreate the kind of feelings that you invoke from the music because they haven't had the same depth of life experience that you've had. And in some little snapshot, you've created something that communicates to people like us, whatever those deep parts of life are that most people don't want to address or don't know how to address. So, yeah, man, I think thank you for being courageous and talking to 2 random kids on Zoom about it.